Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Wednesday, December 4th, 2024. This is The Excerpt. Today, Donald Trump wants his hush money case tossed. Plus, some Senate Republicans are calling for deeper vetting on Trump picks, and we talk about purity culture and pop star Sabrina Carpenter. President-elect Donald Trump argued in a court filing made public yesterday that his New York criminal hush money case should be completely dismissed based on his election victory. Trump was convicted in May of falsifying business records to cover up paying porn star Stormy Daniels to stay quiet before the 2016 election about an alleged sexual encounter between the two of them. He was initially scheduled to be sentenced in July, but he has now gotten several sentencing dates wiped from the calendar as he tries to get his 34 felony convictions tossed out. In his motion asking the New York Criminal Court to throw out both the convictions and his indictment, Trump said the Presidential Transition Act, which supports the presidential transition process, demonstrates that immediate dismissal of this case is required. He also argued the case should be dismissed based on a New York law that allows a court to throw out an indictment in the furtherance of justice. The court, for example, is allowed to consider how dismissing an indictment would impact community safety or welfare. Trump also cited President Joe Biden's comments when he pardoned his son Hunter on Sunday. The president said raw politics had infected the legal process for Hunter. Prosecutors must file their responses to Trump's request by Monday. They've already said they will oppose the motion, though they've also acknowledged the demands and obligations of the presidency. It's not clear if prosecutors will push for Trump to be sentenced before his January 20th inauguration, try to argue the sentencing could go forward during Trump's presidency, or argue it shouldn't take place until Trump's next term ends. Senate Republicans are calling for deeper vetting on a pair of Donald Trump picks for major positions. I spoke with USA Today White House correspondent Francesca Chambers for more. Hey, Francesca.
Hey, Taylor.
So, Francesca, let's start with Pete Hegseth. He's been tapped to lead the Pentagon. What's his background and what are some of the main controversies swirling around him?
So Pete Hegseth is a veteran and a conservative media personality, but he has come under fire since Trump picked him to be head of the Department of Defense for allegations that he engaged in sexual misconduct. Now, this was something that senators knew before they returned from recess this week. But since then, new reports have emerged about Hegseth. One of them accuses him of financial mismanagement of a pair of veterans organizations that he ran. He was also accused in the report of sexual impropriety as well as misconduct.
Well, you mentioned the senators, Francesca. What are we hearing from GOP senators about, the confirmation process and whether they'll ultimately vote to confirm Hegseth?
Republican senators say that they certainly want to be supportive of Trump's expected nominees, including Pete Hegseth, but they want to know more about them. Not just him, also Kash Patel, who he says that he will nominate to lead the FBI. When it comes to Pete Hegseth, one thing that we heard from senators this week was that they wanted to see Trump's intended nominees go through background checks, specifically by the FBI. Trump's team had not yet signed an agreement with the Department of Justice that would allow the folks that he is tapping to fill out his administration to go through background checks and security clearances. However, his team on Tuesday announced that it had signed a memorandum of understanding with Justice that would allow it to begin that process.
And we should note that Pete Hegseth has denied allegations through his lawyer. As for Kash Patel, Francesca, he's been tapped to lead the FBI. What's some of the controversy around him and how do Senate Republicans view his prospects?
So one of the controversies there, Taylor, is that there already is a director of the FBI, and those are 10-year appointments. But the president can fire the FBI director and has signaled by saying that he intends to nominate Kash Patel to that position, that he plans to do that when he takes office. Now, Patel is a bit of a lightning rod for controversy. Patel has vowed to shut down the FBI building on his first day and reopen it the next day as a museum to the quote-unquote deep state. However, that has not seemed to hurt his chances in the U.S. Senate with Republicans so far. The senators that we spoke to as they were coming back from recess said they really didn't know that much about him and that they looked forward to meeting with him. But they also wanted to see a background check on him too.
In terms of what we have in store over these next few weeks, Francesca, I mean, really what's next and what's the process look like going from here?
So Donald Trump can't actually nominate anyone to serve in these positions until he takes office on January 20th. But the way that this has typically worked is that once a president elect signals that they plan to nominate someone for the position, then the US Senate holds confirmation hearings on those individuals. We already know, Taylor, that the Senate intends to take up Trump's Department of Defense nomination in January. After committees of jurisdiction hear from Trump's intended nominees, they'll take a vote. Assuming that they make it out of the committee hearing process, then their nominations will go before the full Senate.
Great breakdown for us as always. Francesca Chambers is a White House correspondent with USA Today. Thanks, Francesca.
Thanks so much.
The Supreme Court today will consider states' ability to prevent transgender adolescents from using puberty blockers and hormone therapy. The major culture war flashpoint comes to the High Court after President-elect Donald Trump campaigned on ending what he called left-wing gender insanity. How the conservative court decides the transgender rights case out of Tennessee could affect not just access to specific medical treatments across much of the country, but could also impact ongoing legal challenges to other rules targeting transgender people, like those restricting bathroom use and sports competition. Enacted in 2023, Tennessee's law bans doctors from giving puberty blockers or hormone therapy to a minor seeking treatment for gender dysphoria, the psychological distress a person may experience when their assigned sex and gender identity don't match. You can hear arguments live on USA Today's YouTube channel beginning this morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And you can find a link to that in today's show notes. There's been a rise in purity culture, disparaging casual sex for women, and much of the latest heat is falling on pop star Sabrina Carpenter. I caught up with USA Today wellness reporter Alyssa Goldberg to discuss Sabrina and why the way we talk about sex is changing. Alyssa, thanks for hopping on today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So let's start by talking Sabrina Carpenter, her rise in recent years. What's happened and how has she really seemed to lean into her sexuality?
Sabrina Carpenter is a 25-year-old Disney turned pop star. So she got her start on Girl Meets World, but you may know her from her hit single Espresso or for opening on the Eras tour last year. She's really leaned into this idea of being a blonde bombshell, a hyper feminine icon of the sorts. She writes very freely about sex, having it, wanting it, and she's not afraid to take that a step further on stage. She used to do these cheeky outros for her song Nonsense, but now on this tour, she's been pantomiming sex positions during the song Juno, in which she sings, the lyric is, want to try out some freaky positions. Have you ever tried this one? So that's what's been going on lately.
And really, how are folks reacting to this kind of hyper-sexual approach? Have we heard a lot of backlash? Is there general acceptance? I mean, really, what's the mood?
Fans have called her for the girls and see these performances as a fun celebration of her sexuality, but definitely not everyone has been on board. People have accused her of catering to the male gaze, which would mean that she's only behaving in this way to appease men.
You know, this brings us to a broader conversation on sex and dating, which she wrote about as part of this piece, Alyssa. It seems like we are seeing a rise in this kind of purity culture. Is that true? And really, how is that playing out in society?
So it depends where you look, because on dating apps, they've really contributed to the normalization of casual or short term dating, with some even offering things like intimacy without commitment as an option under the what are you looking for section. But also online, there's been a pushback against that, with some viral tweets lately claiming that hookup culture doesn't benefit women or that sex can never be casual. And over the summer, there's been the trend in which women took intentional breaks from dating or having sex with men. So there's been kind of a clash between, for some people, just saying that it's unfulfilling, but for other people saying that this doesn't benefit women specifically.
Well, you know, Sabrina Carpenter, as we've outlined, has had this meteoric rise in the last few years. I mean, what does this rise in popularity tell us about this moment in time? Does it show us there's a real pushback against some of these ideas around purity, or really can all of these ideas kind of coexist at the same time?
Carpenter herself has said that she really wants to embrace her femininity and, in her words, the very real feelings of desire that come with being a woman in your 20s. But the discourse around her is coming at a time where we're seeing this shift right politically among many young people, and when access to reproductive health care has been limited in numerous states. We've also seen the rise in popularity of trad wife influencers who promote these quote unquote traditional values and families, and certain male podcasters that have really steered listeners away from feminism and feminist beliefs. In response, some women have talked about participating in the 4B movement, which would be abstaining from any and all relationships or sexual interactions with men. But at the end of the day, most people still want connections, and there are women who want to have sex and relationships with men. A therapist I spoke to, Jordan Pickell, said that most of her patients are still looking to either have relationships with new people or to nurture the relationships with the men in their lives. But whether or not they're looking for hookups or relationships, they're more concerned about their physical and emotional safety than ever before. So while they're not taking part in the 4B movement, they are being more selective and cautious in finding their partners. But I think bringing Sabrina back into it, she's really exemplifying that there's not a right way or a wrong way to navigate this current landscape. It's okay to be expressive like herself, to be unapologetic, and to own your sexual agency. But it's also okay to abstain from sex altogether if that's what you want. I think what she shows is that it's really about honoring and being confident in your own wants and your own needs.
Great breakdown. Alyssa Goldberg is a wellness reporter with USA Today. Listeners can find this full piece with a link in today's show notes. Thank you, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Beyoncé has been named the greatest pop star of the 21st century by Billboard. The magazine, which has been gradually unveiling its rankings over the last several months, announced yesterday that Queen Bee secured the #1 spot on its list of 25 greatest pop stars. She was previously named Billboard's Greatest Star of the Year in 2003 and 2014, and this time beat out other superstars, including Taylor Swift at #2 and Rihanna at #3. This year marked the end of a 20-year struggle to remove 4 hydroelectric dams from the Klamath River that runs along the California-Oregon state line. Their construction impeded fish migration for nearly a century and ultimately resulted in a river basin high in phosphorus and toxic algae, killing off salmon and steelhead downriver. Now all 4 dams have been taken down. So what happens next? Listen in beginning at 4 p.m. Eastern Time today to hear Indigenous Affairs reporter Deborah Utasia Kroll with the Arizona Republic, part of the USA Today network, in conversation with my colleague Dana Taylor. And today is World Wildlife Conservation Day, a chance to think about how we can help protect our planet's creatures. Thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your pods. And if you're not a smart speaker, just ask for The Excerpt. I'm Taylor Wilson, and I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.